65 million years ago, an asteroid the size of a city destroyed almost all life on Earth. But what if it had missed? I'm not talking about dinosaurs simply surviving. I'm talking about something much more interesting. I'm talking about the possibility that dinosaurs actually developed intelligence, that today, right now, you could be walking alongside a civilization of dino humans. And the most mind-blowing thing about this story, it's not fiction, it's real science. Before I tell you everything, there's one thing you need to know. There's a scientist from the University of Cambridge who calculated exactly what an intelligent dinosaur would look like, and what he found is going to change the way you think about ourselves. That's coming at the end. To understand what would have happened if the asteroid had missed, you first need to understand what world the dinosaurs were living in right before the impact. 66 million years ago was not the barren planet we imagine. It was a green, warm world full of life. The rivers were bigger, the forests were denser, and the dinosaurs were not the clumsy monsters from the movies. Some of them were already evolving. The truodontids, for example, small dinosaurs with proportionally large brains, hands capable of precise grip, and eyes that could see in the dark, if they had had another 10 million years, what would they have become? And here's something nobody mentions. The truodontids were already showing signs of complex social behavior. We're going to look at exactly what that means in a moment. So the real question isn't whether dinosaurs could have evolved intelligence. The question is, at what rate? On Earth, primates developed complex intelligence in approximately 10 to 15 million years of sustained evolution. Dinosaurs had everything they needed to follow a similar path. Some scientists even argue they could have done it faster. Why faster? Because dinosaurs already had an advantage that primates didn't. A body shaped by natural selection to dominate a planet for 165 million years. Their nervous systems were already optimized. They just needed the right push. And that push, according to current evolutionary models, would be exactly the same thing that drove us, a sudden climate shift that forced them to adapt or die. Exactly. For dinosaurs to become intelligent, they needed a challenge, and without the asteroid, that challenge would have come another way. This is where the story gets really interesting. In 1999, a paleontologist named Dale Russell from the University of Ottawa ran a thought experiment that remains one of the most cited in the history of speculative science. He projected what a dinosaur would look like if it had followed an evolutionary path similar to ours, and he arrived at this. He called it the dinosaur. It stood 2 meters tall, it walked upright, it had hands with articulated fingers, large eyes, and a brain the size of ours. It was a reptile, but it was intelligent. And the most striking thing, he didn't make it up, he calculated it. He followed the laws of biology, the skeletal constraints of a truodontid, and the known patterns of convergent evolution. This is the scientist I mentioned at the beginning. But the real question isn't whether this creature could exist. The question is, if it did exist, how much would it resemble us? If dino humans had existed, they wouldn't have developed a civilization like ours. They would have developed a different one. Their cities would have been built for warm climates, their tools would have been more refined in organic materials, not metal, at least at first. Their relationship with the environment would have been completely different, because their ancestors were the absolute dominators of an ecosystem for longer than humans have existed in total. But the most fascinating part is this. Physics is physics. Math is math. If they reached science, they reached the same results we did, just from a completely different path. So what does all of this tell us? It tells us that intelligence is not an accident. It's a destination that evolution tends to repeat. Octopuses, corvids, cetaceans, primates, they all arrived at complex forms of intelligence through separate paths. Dinosaurs would have been another example, and perhaps the most impressive of them all. Remember at the beginning I mentioned the social behaviors of the truodontids? Well, the same patterns we see in them are the ones that led social mammals toward cooperation, language, and eventually civilization. Dinosaurs weren't far off. They were on the path. The asteroid didn't just wipe out the dinosaurs. It wiped out a civilization that could have existed, one that we will never know. If this changed the way you think about evolution, subscribe. The next video is going to be even harder to believe.